Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places, you're off and away. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. Bit of an unusual start to this pause for thought from the consulting room. We're talking today about books, and that was one of the earliest books I read by Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And we're going to talk about why reading is good for you, it's good for your business, and how a lot of the most successful business people around today and over the last 50 years have been avid readers. So the more that you read, the more things you'll know, the more that you learn, the more places you'll go. Another Dr. Seuss there, and we can see on the right-hand side, not reading Dr. Seuss, Bill Gates, who says, reading is still the main way that I both learn new things and test my understanding. So we're going to whiz through some books. We'll give you some recommendations. Some you may have come across before, but it might prompt you to reread them. Some you may not have heard of. Give you some different ideas for kind of books you can read and why it's a useful thing to do. So there are some classics. Business Adventures by John Brooks. That's actually the book that Bill Gates was reading in that last slide. And he was recommended that book by Warren Buffett. And Bill Gates calls it the best business book he's ever read. So that's a good place to start. And then Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, over 50 years old, but still some fantastic information there for today, for running your business, for working with other people, for creating relationships, for networking. Highly recommend that if you haven't read it. Getting a bit more up to date, Michael E. Gerber, E-Myth Revisited, how a lot of people, when they set up a business, make the same kind of mistakes. They hold on to too much, they do too much themselves, they're not able to let go, they're not able to put the right systems in place. So it's a cautionary tale about what can go wrong with a small business, even though you're busy, even though you're selling stuff, even though in one way you're very successful, how business takes control of you. And the father of modern management, really, I think he was described by Business Week magazine as that, Peter Drucker, The Effective Executive. So books about management, about looking after people. There's some classics there coming a bit more up to date. Simon Sinek, who a lot of you will know, Start With Why. One of the most watched TED Talks is his talking about the concept of starting with why and understanding your own why and connecting with people who have the same why as you. But that's a modern classic, I suppose. Start With Why by Simon Sinek, as was Deep Work by Cal Newport, getting really focused in the distracted world that we live in. And finally, on this modern classics, we've got Profit First by Michael Michalowicz. The idea that the first thing you do is take your profit out of your business and you pay everybody else afterwards, sort of turning on its head what a lot of business owners do, which is pay everybody else first, and then find that there's nothing left to pay themselves. So why is it worth reading books? Who can we look at who reads books? And we'll see that a lot of the successful business gurus across the world, Bill Gates reads one book a week, Zuckerberg a book every 2 weeks, seems like a bit of a college geek sometimes when you see him, but these people, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, are great consumers of information, because you're taking information in, it's stimulating your brain, it's giving you ideas. And creativity is about taking one idea from one area, another idea from another area, and putting them together to make a third idea. Mark Cuban, Richard Branson starts his day, even though he's dyslexic, starts the day with reading. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, passionate about books and reading. In fact, Amazon was founded as an online bookstore. He wanted to start an online business and started where his passion was. He started with books and then spread out to everything else that Amazon sells now. So all of these people, absolutely avid readers. And there are different types of book and different types of business book even. So we'll look at a couple of those. There's a sort of general how-to book. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is probably one of the best known of those. Stephen Covey, really, really good. Read it as an audio, sorry, listen to it as an audio book. Read it, dip in and out of it, follow it through. It's a great sort of textbook really for how to be an effective, productive business owner. And then we get to more specialist how-to books, something like 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, real marketing classic there, and sort of psychology style ones where people often people who've studied psychology will dip into how our brains work and why we do certain things. This one's a great one by Robert Cialdini, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, how we get people on side, how we get people to do what we want them to do. Then we move to the autobiography. So a lot of people who have been successful, set up businesses, write their autobiography or get their autobiography written for them by a ghostwriter, but can really give you an insight and fascinating stories there. So this is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. You may not, a lot of people wouldn't recognize the name Phil Knight, but you'd certainly recognize the Nike tick across there, across the front of the book. And his story is fascinating, how he started the business because of his passion for shoes, as they call them in America, trainers we call them in the UK, and how you nearly never heard of Nike because they pretty much went out of business and they were just saved at the last minute by one connection that he'd made before they actually managed to monetize the company. Even again, though they'd sold lots of shoes, they'd been successful. They hadn't set the business up to be a monetizable model. So reading somebody's autobiography can give you an insight not only into their thinking, but into the way that they ran the business, they created the business, the sort of problems that they overcame and how they overcame them. And then there are textbook styles. So The Secret Life of the Brain is what I'm reading at the moment. Just gives you some clinical information, if you like, as to why people think in certain ways, how our brains work, which I find fascinating. And then a wider textbook style is something like Sapiens, if you haven't come across that. It's a long book to read, but a fascinating book, the history of humankind, how we came to be masters of the planet, I suppose. So lots and lots of different styles of book you can read, and people learn in different ways. There are visual, auditory and kinesthetic learners. So if you are more of an auditory learner, you've got audiobooks, obviously, but you've also got podcasts if you want things in a more bite-sized chunk. So there's a list of some of the best business podcasts around at the moment. And in this world where our attention spans can be getting shorter and shorter, there are so many calls on your time and you just want bite-sized pieces of information. You don't really have time to read a whole book. Then there are things like Blinkist. If you haven't come across that, you can get a free book each day, or you can sign up and get access to hundreds, thousands of summaries of books. So the key points of these books in 10 minutes worth of reading. And then if that sparks your interest, if it sounds like what you feel you should read, then you can buy the full book and plow your way through it. So Checklist Manifesto and Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. Recommend both of those books as well. Fantastic. And there's science behind it. Reading helps you live longer. Yale research showed that of 3,500 people aged over 50, those who read for 30 minutes a day lived on average 23 months longer than people who didn't read. So a bit of science behind that, and also some research from the University of Toronto said that reading fiction helps you to be more creative and more open-minded. So it's not just about business books, textbooks, learning technical things, learning to do new things. Just any kind of reading will stimulate your brain, will get you thinking creatively, will help you to relax. So I finish off with my favorite business style book, if you like. It's Winning by Clive Woodward, manager of the England rugby team when they won the World Cup in 2003 with a last minute in extra time drop goal by Johnny Wilkinson. And Clive Woodward was he was just at the cusp of professionalism for rugby union, and he worked for Xerox, the photocopier people. And when he was a player, he had to do that. It was amateur when he was a player, and he was just becoming professional when he became manager of the England rugby team. And it's a really interesting book about not only his career as a player, as a manager, winning the World Cup, the story of that, but also trying to take business practices and professionalize the England rugby team. And the absolute attention to detail that he brought to that role was amazing. And he talks about talent is one thing you need. So he picked players on talent, but also teachability. And he asked the question, are you a rock or a sponge? Are you a sponge who will take in information, who will gain new knowledge, who's always keen to suck things in? Or are you a rock that's immutable, you're fixed, you're not going to be changed by anything coming externally? And he wanted sponges in the team. He wanted people who would take on the learning, who would be adaptable, who would change the way they did things if it improved the team. He had a great expression, teacup, thinking correctly under pressure. That was what he taught the England team to do, and the epitome of that was the drive towards the last minute drop goal in the World Cup final when the pressure was really on, because all the players were thinking correctly under pressure and knew what they had to do. They were able to create that opportunity for Jonny Wilkinson to score the winning points. It was about attitude as being the most important thing to select people for, to bring into a business, and one more word from that is teamship. Great teams are made up of great individuals. So you start by selecting great individuals and then mold them into a team. So that's a book I'd recommend. Any of the other ones that are on the video here, I'd recommend as well. But just reading, just take information in, whether it's in short bite-sized chunks like Blinkist or blogs, whether it's listening to books while you're out doing something else. Absolutely, take information in, think about it, think about how it applies to your business, stimulate your thinking. And talking of stimulating your thinking, Michael and I are always happy to have a chat to you, book a time to chat to one of us in the consulting room. And that's this week's Pause for Thought. The power of reading, the power of books.